Have you ever pondered over the root of the seemingly perpetual Israel-Palestine conflict? This question, my friends, opens up a Pandora's box of historical events, political maneuvers, and territorial disputes. The genesis of this conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century, specifically to the era of British colonial rule in Palestine. The British, as part of their imperialistic endeavors, promised to create a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine through the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a promise that sowed the seeds of discord. Fast forward to the aftermath of the Second World War, a time when the world was still reeling from the horrors of the Holocaust. The global sentiment was largely sympathetic towards the Jews, leading to the formation of the State of Israel in 1948. This creation, while being a beacon of hope for the Jewish people, was seen as a usurpation of their lands by the Palestinians, marking the beginning of a long-standing territorial dispute. The formation of Israel did not happen in a vacuum. It was accompanied by a mass exodus of Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. The displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes added fuel to the fire of resentment as they felt they were paying the price for a war they did not start. The establishment of Israel was followed by a series of wars, uprisings, and peace treaties, each adding a new layer of complexity to the conflict. The Six-Day War of 1967, for instance, resulted in Israel seizing control of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, territories that are still hotbeds of contention today. In this intricate web of events, the role of external powers, particularly the British, cannot be overlooked. Their decisions, shaped by their colonial interests, played a significant role in facilitating this conflict, a conflict that continues to shape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Understanding these roots is crucial to discerning the complexities of the peace attempts and rejections we will discuss next. So, stay tuned as we delve deeper into the heart of this enduring conflict. With such a long-standing conflict, it's no surprise that there have been numerous attempts at peace. But why have they failed? Let's take a journey back in time. Our first stop is 1993 with the Oslo Accords. This historic agreement was meant to create a sense of mutual recognition between Israel and Palestine, and it marked the first time that Palestine officially recognized Israel's right to exist. However, the promise of peace was short-lived. Despite the diplomatic progress, Palestine's leadership rejected the final status agreement, citing a lack of clarity over key issues such as borders and refugees. Fast forward to 2000 and the Camp David summit. Here we had another monumental opportunity for peace, with proposals that included the establishment of a Palestinian state and the division of Jerusalem. Yet again, the peace offer was rejected. Palestine's leadership argued that the proposals did not adequately address their demands for a complete Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Our last stop is the Annapolis Conference in 2007. Organized by the United States, this was yet another attempt to resolve the conflict. The conference resulted in a joint understanding to negotiate all core issues, with the goal of concluding a peace treaty by the end of 2008. Despite this ambitious plan, the negotiations fell apart. Palestine's leadership pointed to ongoing Israeli settlement activity as a major obstacle to peace. The common thread in all these failed peace attempts is the refusal by Palestine's leadership to accept any compromise. Each time they have cited different reasons. Whether it be the lack of clarity over borders, the right of return for refugees, or ongoing Israeli settlement activity, it's important to remember that peace is a two-way street. It requires compromise and goodwill from both sides. As we've seen, these peace attempts have been unsuccessful, but what role does Palestine play in this? The answer is complex, but it's clear that the repeated rejections of peace offers have played a significant part in prolonging this tragic conflict. Now, let's delve into the part Palestine plays in prolonging this conflict. Diving straight in, it's important to acknowledge that the Palestinian side has, on several occasions, initiated violence. One such instance was the Second Intifada, which saw an upsurge of violent incidents in the early 2000s, causing a significant escalation in the conflict. Furthermore, the refusal to negotiate has also been a recurring issue. The Camp David summit in the year 2000 was a prime example of this. Despite numerous attempts to broker peace, the Palestinian leadership rejected proposals without presenting any counteroffers. This lack of willingness to engage in dialogue is a critical factor in the perpetuation of the conflict. Another point to consider is the allegations of Palestine using the conflict as a pretext to justify attacks on Israeli police officers. This is evident in several instances of violence directed at Israeli law enforcement in the occupied territories. These attacks, often unprovoked, are seen by many as an attempt to provoke retaliation and further escalate the situation, rather than seeking a peaceful resolution. It's also worth noting that, while the Palestinian leadership has often voiced its commitment to peace, actions on the ground frequently suggest otherwise. A case in point is the continuous funding and support for groups associated with violence and terrorism such as Hamas. This dichotomy between words and actions adds another layer of complexity to the conflict. However, it's essential to remember that pointing out these issues isn't about demonizing one side, but about understanding the dynamics of the conflict. The goal here is to shed light on the actions that contribute to the continuation of this long-standing issue. In the end, it's about seeking a path towards a peaceful resolution, which requires acknowledging the mistakes and missteps of all parties involved. As we navigate this complex issue, it's crucial to approach it with an open mind and a commitment to truth and justice. The role of Palestine in the conflict is clear, but let's remember, this analysis is not about inciting hate, but seeking truth. With this ongoing conflict causing so much pain and suffering, isn't it time to ask, when will it end? The urgency for resolution in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict cannot be overstated. Every day, the toll of this strife is counted not in numbers or statistics, but in the lives of ordinary people, their dreams deferred, their hopes shattered. Children grow into adults amidst fear and uncertainty, their futures held hostage to a dispute they had no hand in creating. The human cost of this conflict is staggering, and it continues to mount with each passing day. Mothers, fathers, sons and daughters are all caught in the crossfire, their lives forever marked by the scars of this unending turmoil. It's not just a question of territory or politics anymore, it's about human lives, human dignity, and the right of every individual to live in peace and security. But to end this conflict, both parties must come to the negotiation table in good faith. It's not enough to point fingers or assign blame. The stakes are too high, the cost too great. Both sides must recognize the humanity of the other, must understand that peace is not a zero-sum game where one's gain is the other's loss. There is a need for acknowledging past mistakes and for willingness to make hard compromises. There is a need for vision and leadership that transcends narrow interests and looks toward the greater good. A resolution can only be achieved when both sides are willing to put aside their differences and work together towards a common goal. The path to peace is not an easy one. It's fraught with challenges, with setbacks, with moments of despair, but it's also filled with the promise of a better tomorrow, of a world where children can grow up without fear, where families can thrive without the shadow of conflict hanging over them. The path to peace is fraught with challenges, but for the sake of humanity, it's a path that must be tread. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've explored today. In our journey, we've delved into the origins of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a deeply rooted issue that has spanned several generations. A battle over land and identity, it was born from clashing nationalistic ideals, further complicated by religious and political intricacies. We trace the timeline of failed peace attempts, a series of missed opportunities and rejected proposals. These were moments when the dove of peace could have taken flight, but instead, it remained caged, its wings clipped by the refusal to compromise. The Camp David Summit, the Taba Summit, and the Annapolis Conference, all were instances where peace was within grasp, yet slipped through the fingers. We examined Palestine's role in this conflict and involvement marked by a pattern of antagonism. There were instances when tensions escalated, not from self-defense, but seemingly with an intention to provoke. It is important to note that this isn't about casting blame or spreading hate, but about acknowledging the actions that have fueled the fire of this ongoing strife. We talked about the urgent need for resolution. The cost of this conflict is not just measured in land or resources, but in lives. Lives that are caught in the crossfire, lives that are disrupted, and lives that are lost. It's a price too heavy to bear, a burden we should strive to lift by seeking a peaceful, lasting solution. As we've seen, the path to peace is not a straightforward one. It's a winding road filled with obstacles, but understanding the complexities of the conflict, recognizing the mistakes of the past, and being open to dialogue and compromise are crucial first steps. Peace is a puzzle, It's about fitting together pieces of understanding, tolerance, and coexistence. It's about seeing the bigger picture and working towards it, for the sake of those who have suffered and for the generations yet to come. As we've seen, the path to peace is not a straightforward one, but understanding the complexities of the conflict is a crucial first step.